This is episode 2.5 of SWADEcast, where we talk about a whole bunch of shit.
Is it Swade? I am Swade! The whole thing is Swade! I can't have this...
So is this just going to be like Swade versions 4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3? Like,
Well, no, because ours is 2.5 because I already have episode 3 in the can and recorded with Susan, and we called it episode 3, and I made a thumbnail calling it episode 3. But I want this one to come out first because, I guess the first thing is we haven't seen it. It should be out by the time this episode comes out, sadly. But Swade 5.0 is coming.
5th edition, yeah.
Yeah, I know. They just wanted to catch up with D&D.
Yeah, they already did, so that's good, I guess.
I mean, I believe Shadowrun's also on 5th edition, so it's just the thing to do. They're just speeding it up. Deluxe, all that, those are separate games. This is Swade 5th edition.
Yeah, can't wait to see what else is new. Apparently they said they got a lot of feedback at Genghis Khan. And
they said they were doing blind testing.
Yeah.
We don't know at all what they are. I'm hoping the changes are for the better. I think the big thing, and what a lot of us who weren't knee-jerking and saying what is and isn't working in the game by skimming it were saying was stuff like they made a lot of changes really quickly.
Yeah.
So some of those really showed as not being thought out. So I'm hoping some of those knee-jerk changes, some changed back with just minor revisions rather than big changes, maybe some fiddling with stuff. Maybe everything isn't that hard line they were talking about of skills and attributes.
It's almost like beta testing this at a few big cons might have been a good idea.
Almost. Again, you didn't get to be on episode 3, which, spoilers, it's titled Where's Mike? Because, hey, now you're in every other episode, so that fits better as a co-host.
That's true, and it will add to my mysterious allure next week when I'm not there. This is some weird time travel shit.
That's when we'll start promoting our Smash Up episodes, because I want to do that now.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun. A couple weeks ago when I recorded with Susan, we were actually talking, because Susan hates common knowledge as a skill.
Yeah.
She openly does. I don't really like it either, because here's the thing that bugs me about it, which means I'm saying things that are going to show up next episode anyways. But I think this really shows in that, like, you really show stuff out is, well, they made common knowledge because of that divide between skills and attributes and stuff, right?
Sure.
When do the players ever decide to roll common knowledge?
Yeah.
Even by its description, and like there's a bunch of skills where they go, or the DM or the GM could decide to make you have a common knowledge roll. So if it's a called for roll, why isn't it still smarts?
Yeah.
It actually falls in line with the rules of.
Yeah, I mostly feel the same way. We've talked about this as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't hate it as a skill, but I don't like it as a skill. I'm pretty ambivalent to it. I don't think it's necessary, but it's not like game ruining for me.
That's the thing.
It's not like splitting up Two-Fisted into two edges.
We're not touching that. Maybe they'll get rid of it. The weird thing is, I definitely think that's more likely of a change because it's a smaller change.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing I find really weird about the common knowledge, and we're going to drop it after this, is like you said, it doesn't break the game, but not only does it feel like a needless change, it's a needless change that when you actually break it down and look at the game, it's going in the opposite direction of where they're trying to go with the game.
Yeah.
So like it's one random step in the opposite direction.
Yeah. I think what's kind of silly about it too is it used to just be a smarts roll. I mean, I don't think you're going to have... I mean, I know technically, based on how you can build characters, you could make a really dumb character with a really high common knowledge. But that doesn't sound like a very logical character in most cases.
Or a really smart character with really low common knowledge.
Yeah, which I guess that's more common. Like, there are people who are very, very smart in specific areas, and they make it a hindrance. Minus... It's already a hindrance. It's clueless.
Yeah.
So, it's already covered there. So
that's
my wife's character in our sci-fi game is a doctor, but he has the clueless hindrance because he's really good at doing doctor things, but he has very little common sense, and he comes from a people who are very like insular and sheltered, and so they don't know a lot about the outside world. So he's also kind of dumb sometimes.
Yeah, I honestly, I know we're gonna drop it as we keep going.
Yeah.
But as I've said, I kind of feel like with how they revise skills, they took the criticism of the skill list is too short and added a skill to fix it rather than like the actual criticisms about why it's too short. Now, granted, some people were just complaining, oh, it just is too short. Ignore those people.
Well, yeah, we should have bows and guns as different skills. Bladed weapons, blunt weapons, fists. Nunchucks should be a skill.
Well, no, this could be a whole other episode. Because first of all, there's a rule for it. It's called skill specialization. But more so, listen to the people that have the design experience.
Yeah.
People who might know what they're doing and do it for a living, like you do, Shane. And the armchair guy who skimmed your book, while this is probably going to piss off some of those armchair people, if you're not a professional at it, take the time and look and research and do the work to figure out why. Sometimes your opinion will be completely valid, but a lot of the times it's misinformed or short-sighted.
Right.
And I definitely feel like they responded to a lot of short-sighted remarks.
Yeah.
Well,
they didn't give a lot of time for feedback. I would have rather had them say the book isn't coming out till the fall and give it more time to brew and figure out what works and what doesn't. Like I said, beta tested a few cons. Like big, huge publishers do that. When I was at PAX Unplugged, not this past year, but the year before, they were beta testing the new edition of Vampire. And like, so even the biggest publishers do it. Like it's not.
In fact, the bigger publishers are the ones doing it.
Yeah.
Which is what kind of said it. Because honestly, Wizards of the Coast really kicked this off with how they handled 5th edition.
Well, yeah, when they did Next and all that. Yeah. I feel like you can learn from these guys.
If they did it as a play test, it would have worked. But instead what it was they called it a release, and now that release is over and we're 5 editions in already.
Yeah.
But that is what it is. Again, we could have a whole episode griping about that, and I'm probably going to chop a lot of this because we had an episode dedicated to it. Me and Susan talked about it a lot in 2 weeks for them and 2 weeks ago for me.
First episode of this we recorded, we talked about it too.
Yeah.
We're on like 4th edition.
Like it feels like beating a dead horse, but at the same time, the horse keeps getting up.
Yeah, stay down, horse. I will say, like I said to you guys before, not on here, but I would rather they take the time to do these revisions than have to errata something later or us have to live with something stupid and broken. So for as much as I complain about it, I'm happy they're doing it if it leads to a better game. So.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway that I forgot to do because of all of our tech issues and stuff. I would still rather it be the best version of the game.
Right.
Like at the end of the day, we have that, and I'm hoping it's an even better version. I'm kind of really happy. I had issues converting my PDF to Lulu. It wouldn't do the upload because sometimes it does that. Because I was going to buy my print version already.
Yeah.
My paperback. Because now that my wife's playing again, I want a second copy for her.
Right.
As well as I just want a copy earlier than June.
Yeah. I have actually a pretty good friend who works in a print shop, and they do very he does very large scale printing, but I think they do like small scale stuff too. So I was going to talk to him about trying to get a copy printed.
Let me know prices.
Yeah.
If you're close enough.
Yeah.
I'll just do that. That's easier than Lulu if the prices aren't too bad.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, honestly, he would probably do it for me for free, but I don't know. Yeah.
Work expense. But moving on from that, still SWADE.
Yeah.
At least I doubt you have much to say about this, but finally, Fantasy Grounds officially has SWADE.
Which edition?
We don't know. It could be anything, but it should be live updating. I've only gotten to tool around on it a little bit this morning. Mm-hmm. It already looks better than the deluxe one. Because, again, I'm sorry, and this is going to anger what I've actually been counting is less than 10 people who are actually heavy pushing Fantasy Grounds. They won't shut up about it. And the Savage Worlds Deluxe Fantasy Ground stuff sucked, guys. Like, if you say, oh, if you download this or that, or if you buy more things, it sucks as is. Now, some of the settings might be really good. The ETU stuff sucks. And I hate that. But the Fantasy Grounds ETU stuff is bad. Stuff is just flat out broken or missing, or you got to go in and code it yourself.
Yeah.
But so far, the Suede stuff looks good.
Nice.
And the big thing I wanted to bring up is they said Suede was going to be its own module. Mm-hmm. If you already own Deluxe, the first time you open a Deluxe game, a game using the Savage Worlds module, they'll ask if you want to upgrade it to Adventure. So you can get Suede for free, but then you'll no longer run Deluxe.
Right.
And everyone from this point on either buys Suede or buys Deluxe. They'll both be available for purchase. But if you've already invested, you get to upgrade for free or choose not to. I think it's a one-time thing. Like a dialogue box only pops up once. If you say no, you have now decided to keep Deluxe. But I do like that I don't have to rebuy something.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. From a business standpoint, that's great.
Yeah.
They do old editions for other games too. I didn't realize they did.
Well, 3.5.
Do they? I don't use Fantasy Grounds really, so. Fantasy
Grounds has 3.5. It has 4th edition and it has 5th edition.
Oh, cool.
Pathfinder and Pathfinder 2e are separate things. The big thing, though, is stuff like D&D, the editions are completely different games.
Right.
Savage Worlds has always been, oh, no, it's not really an edition, it's an upgrade. And for the most part, I've always agreed until now. Yeah. This one, it's changed so much, even just from Deluxe, let alone going even further back. It's a new edition.
Yeah.
It shares a lot of the same DNA, just like 5th edition and 3.5 D&D share a lot of the same DNA.
I think 5th and 2nd edition are...
I agree. Well,
games in a lot of ways.
5th and 1st. I don't think 5th shares a lot of DNA with AD&D.
See, I think it's a lot of the same... So there are a lot of differences mechanically. I think the design concepts are very similar. And like the... I guess theory around the game are very similar.
What's hilarious, and this is one of those, I was, back when I was doing my writing a few years ago and actually doing articles for people and stuff, I looked into this, and it's a really funny thing. I completely disagree, but everyone's memory of the design philosophies of AD&D has somehow warped. AD&D existed at the same time as D&D 2nd edition and all of that, and the boxes. It's closer to the design philosophy of the boxes. AD&D's whole thing was we want to be as crunchy as possible.
So,
like, that's what was built for, and it's not that. But for some reason, everybody remembers AD&D, even if they're thinking of the Red Box, which are actually different games. They kind of had their own edition wars at that time.
Yeah.
Because I would say it's very close to, like, the Metzner boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I downloaded a bunch of the Dark Sun stuff. I mean, this is completely off topic, but
it is
Dark Sun stuff, and it's been so much easier to convert for 5th edition than any of the 3rd edition or 4th edition stuff.
Yes.
And it's because a lot of it, like, so we're way too off topic now. But,
chopping block, because this is SWADEcast.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We'll talk about that after we record.
We'll talk about Dungeons and Dragons, Monster of the Week.
Yeah, I'll chop a huge chunk of this.
Yeah.
So it's unintelligible, but they understand we went on a side tangent. Something. Yeah. I don't know. Or leave it all, because I'm lazy. But, yeah, the other big news in the Savage Worlds community was Fantasy Grounds hit. Like... And it's hilarious because one of my players was like, oh, yeah, you can actually get access to Suede like through their test stuff and all. I couldn't figure it out. Now it's just official. Now the dialogue box actually pops up and it does it. It's just done. I actually deleted the custom conditions I had made because they actually have them now. So things look like they work well. I also constantly forget that stunned involves distracted.
Yeah.
and you're distracted as long as you are stunned. So you do actually have to roll vigor at a -2 to come out of stunned.
It sucks.
It's rough.
Yeah.
There is one more piece of news. It's not official. Oh, it's in the community news, but it has to do with the community. It has to do with Savage Worlds, but it has to do with this channel. And it kind of sucks for you, Mike. Hopefully you can figure out a scheduling thing around it. But we're going to be interviewing the cast of Wild Cards in a week from Sunday. Yeah. The channel.
Yeah.
It's looking like just me. Because Dan works, I think, Susan on weekends, and that's like right in the middle of her con stuff.
Yeah.
But the channel's going to get to interview the whole cast of Wild Cards. Now, I will let you know, I did have the options of, like, I could have interviewed on, like, a Wednesday or something easier, but it wouldn't have been the whole cast.
Yeah.
It would have been like, you can interview this, and this person on this day, or this combination on this day. The only day we can figure out to get everybody is the 10th, is the soonest day. And I was like, I'd be happy interviewing any of them, but I also kind of don't want to be like, well, no, I'd rather pick the one with this person than this person. And
right.
I'd rather get them all if I can.
No, I agree 100%.
Honestly, we'll probably have Megan come on, Megan Caves, from it on her own on one. Because at first she was going and asking stuff, and we were talking about just doing an interview with her, and then we shifted to, I was like, can we actually get everybody? And I even messaged her, I was like, I don't want you to think I don't want to interview you, but if we can get everybody, like, why not? At least for an introductory, like, first time.
Right.
See?
And then next time you'll have somebody who actually plays Deadlands, maybe.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is they're currently playing ETU, and I'm the ETU guy for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So shove it up your ass. Yeah, no, I do. I wish you could be there. And it sucks because you had messaged me before, like, as long as it's not these 2 dates, I'll be good.
Yeah, it was one of those 2 dates. Yeah.
We're wrangling 5 people. Like,
to be fair, I think that my excuse that day is I'll be drinking all day. So I might be able to be there, but
why not both?
Well, I'll be at a brewery, so I guess I bring my laptop and mic and set up there. And
just set up in a quiet spot?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been in a brewery. Are there quiet spots in breweries?
Oh, it depends on where you go. I'll be at Trogs, actually, so I'll be not too far from you.
Oh, okay. I know where you'll be.
Yeah.
Okay. That's some good shit. Shit, you'll be close enough. Just fucking come over.
Or you just come to Trogs and we'll just record there.
I have this thing called a setup with the camera and a mic that has a 180-degree sound, so it would work for 2 people, and I'm lazy.
I can just bring my mic. It's fine.
You could. More, I'm just saying, you're welcome to come over for it.
We'll see how the day goes.
Have my wife actually believe she can make friends.
Oof.
But
I cut that out.
Meaner than I meant it to be. It's like real personal issues and stuff, and put that on blast.
Yeah. She doesn't listen to this, right?
No. Hell no. Anyways, that is our announcements and news and stuff. I never thought there'd be so much news at once. I'd be like, yeah, we got to reshift the order of episodes, but this will now air before the wild cards. So when you hear this, next Tuesday, the episode will be out. Yeah. Unless you hear it late, because that's actually how most people find stuff on YouTube and everything, at which point it's already out. Yay!
Yay, old news.
That one I can actually brand as SWADEcast, too, unlike the Rev interview.
Yeah.
So, wow, there's going to be 2 SWADEcast videos before episode 3, between episode 2 and 3.
Nice.
But yeah, with that out of the way, we can actually get to our topic, because I think that definitely took up the time of what have we been doing? What's going on?
I mean, if you really want to know what I've been doing, it's been being very sick and coughing a lot. So
that's why my kid threw up this morning.
Ugh.
So while she has school right now, she's home. This week, we're talking about house rules. And I will say that PDF I sent you guys of my house rules, that the ones I'm using and the ones I'm trying, because I don't think they're one and the same. Like, there's the ones I know I use and I always use. And then there's the ones I'm experimenting with. I put those up on the Patreon.
Nice.
Now, to avoid legal issues, I will say they are on the patron site, open to everybody. They are not behind a paywall, so it does not violate licensing.
Yay!
They just happen to be on my Patreon, because that also means people who support us, as a ad comes in, as people who support us will get alerted that they're there. I guess I'll hand it over to you first, because we've had some time with SWADE now. I mean, technically, it's not the same game that it will be in a week yet again.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, it's supposed to drop today, isn't it?
He said this weekend, I think.
Oh, I thought he said, or maybe he said he was going to do like a preview today at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know what it was.
But what setting, what house rules have you been using? Or should we discuss the difference between a house rule and a setting rule first?
Yeah, sure. We can discuss that. Yeah.
Because I do think there's some confusion on that house rules and setting rules aren't one and the same. First of all, a setting rule is tied to a specific setting.
Right.
Now, it gets confusing because the core book has setting rules that aren't tied to a specific setting. But typically, house rules are the rules you're going to use in every game, every setting.
Right. It's rare that I shouldn't say never happens, but I have most of my house rules stay the same between games.
Yeah. And what's funny is the official setting rules from Deluxe, the ones that get ran so often, they essentially just became permanent house rules for people. They just turned into SWADE.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think of some weird setting rules.
Easy enough for weird setting rules is look at ETU, the rituals.
Yeah.
I port them into other games, but they're definitely written for a very specific kind of game. I just tend to run that kind of game a lot.
Right. Another weird one is I think it's Beasts and Barbarians. They have the loincloth hero or something, and it's if you're not wearing any armor or any clothes, you get free soak rolls whenever you get wounded.
Yeah.
So things like that, I'm not going to use in every game because that's absurd. It's really funny in that game and makes a lot of sense, but
yeah, because it's not just unarmored, but you have to be bare chested.
Yeah. So I think that's a setting rule, unless it's an edge, but I'm pretty sure it's a setting rule.
I think it's a setting rule.
Yeah,
it might be an edge. But
they
have a lot of shared DNA. So
yeah. But I would never use that in my last Parsec game.
Yeah. I don't know. Barbarian last Parsec would be a lot of fun.
That's true.
Blasters and barbarians. We're making it.
Done.
I
mean, with the kind of stuff that's out for last Parsec already, it wouldn't be particularly weird.
You could reskin Iron Gate.
Yeah.
To be so awesome as that.
Yeah.
Although it also has to have Dragosaurs.
Well, of course. What else would be on a prison planet of barbarians with laser guns? I don't know. But Iron Gate's actually pretty cool on its own. So
yeah, Savage Worlds isn't about making uncool things cool, Mike. It's about making cool things radical.
That's true. I guess.
Background.
I mean, you say that, and then you look at some settings, and you're like, but
yeah. Well,
I'm not going to bash on anyone specific.
I was going to say we've been negative enough this episode.
Yeah.
And a lot. Episode 1 was us bashing on what we don't like about SWADE. Episode 2. I don't remember. It was a month ago, but tends to have negative stuff. Our conversion episode has a lot of negativity because of stuff like knowledge rolls being not very convertible. Yeah, look forward to that in a week because I'm not talking about it again. That was almost a whole episode. Yeah. And if that doesn't sound entertaining, please listen anyways.
Yeah, I would never publicly bash anyone's setting that they put work into. And I mean, I might bash the person who did it, or I might bash some of the ideas in it. But it's like you attack the argument. You don't attack the person.
Yeah, unless it's knowingly and purposefully offensive.
Well, yeah.
And then I'll just come at you.
I'm trying not to talk about it, so
yeah.
So something's springing to mind, and I don't want to say it because it's too.
Yeah, no, we're stepping away from it, but there's always exceptions that prove the rule. We'll just keep it that way.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. I will say my go-to Joker's Wilder.
Yeah.
Which is funny because the new Joker's Wild is kind of similar in that by the rules, again, I think they still kind of call it Joker's Wild, but this was a setting rule in Deluxe.
Yeah.
Where if any player draws a Benny, all players draws a Benny. If any player draws a Joker, all players get a Benny.
Right.
And in their rule, if the GM draws a Joker, the GM gets a Benny, and all GM wildcards get a Benny. And what's hilarious is I was always worried, like, with my Joker's Wilder, it's real simple. Anyone draws a Joker, GM or player, everybody gets a Benny. All the players get a Benny, the GM gets a Benny in his pot. Mm-hmm. I was worried. I'm like, I'm feeding myself bennies. Like, some people might see this as unfair or overpowered. And now it's kind of nerfing the rule.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, because here's the other thing. If halfway through the game they take a big left turn and all of a sudden I need a wild card to make, like, the scene more interesting that I didn't plan on him being here, I then have to think back of how many Jokers happened. Because he's supposed to get a Benny for every Joker that's happened, whether or not he was in the scene.
Yeah.
On top of the reason I did it was I don't like remembering, oh, wait, no, you drew a Joker, so you guys get Bennies. Oh no, I drew this Joker, no Bennies this time. If I see a Joker, everybody gets a Benny.
So I have always used that rule as well. And it originally, it's funny because I remember when you started using it in our ETU game, I had always done it that way because I didn't read the rules properly originally, and I just thought everybody got a Benny. So
that's how I started doing it, and then I found out how the rule worked. I'm like, I like mine better.
Yeah, and now it's like the players don't get a Benny, but the GM does, and all the GM wildcards. Just a GM, when you're in like a fight, and I get +2 to all of my mooks out there, that's super dangerous for the players as it is. Yeah. I don't need multiple Bennies at the same time. So I've
also that rule swings wildly based on setting.
Right.
You play something like ETU, 1, maybe 2 NPCs for the adventure will get a Benny. You play Savage Rifts, fuck, you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's like 8 Bennies that just showed up.
I've only ever given my my GM-controlled wildcards Bennies on a Joker if the players were, like, getting really messed up and it was a friendly wildcard. And I'd be like, yeah, they can have a Benny too. That's fine. But, like, I've never felt the need for it. Like, I use my Bennies. I'm usually out of them by the end of a session. I don't use them. I try and, like, space them out throughout the game, but I never feel like as a GM I need a ton more Bennies because I'm GM, I can do whatever I want anyway.
Well, and really, like, a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but probably the coolest new Benny use of you can add something to the scene is irrelevant to the GM.
Right. I feel like I use it a lot for drawing new action cards now as a GM.
I was going to say, I don't use that rule. Now,
really?
I don't say it's a house rule that I shaved that rule off as a house rule. It's just, I don't use it. My players don't use it because I feel like it slows the game down too much to have a draw phase and then an action phase. I just go, do, who's going first? Not, here's the cards, let's all look. Do you want to spend Bennies, everybody? Let's have that little chat for 5 to 15 seconds and then start doing something. I'm just like, if you guys see a card and you want it redrawn, let me know because I'm just moving.
Well, right. That's usually how I do it. Like, if it's my own cards, I flip it, and I'm just like, nope, keep flipping, and then I'll throw the Benny in the pot that I spent.
Well, that's the thing. With me, I'm like, I'll just take it. If it's a bad card, that's good for the players. So
yeah. It depends on the scene for me, but I feel like that's a use that I've gotten out of it a lot recently. Also, in a lot of my games, most of my players either take quick or level-headed. Mm. So it's like they usually have a better initiative than me anyway, unless bad guy has level-headed or something. And
you're also playing more games in person.
That's true.
I definitely feel, and we've kind of talked about this a bit before, and this isn't bashing or anything, but SWADE, more than any of the other Savage Worlds versions, I feel kind of went, who gives a fuck about people who play online? Because the rules are built to facilitate needing to be at a table. Like, they'll work outside of it, but stuff like the chase mechanic I'm liking, but it doesn't really work on VTT.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. On Roll20, I can make it work because I can pull cards out as tokens and stuff, but stuff that's super easy at a table isn't always easy on a computer, and vice versa.
Right. I wonder how Fantasy Grounds handles it.
I don't know, and I'll be curious. That may be something that Fantasy Grounds is going to suck at unless there's a module in there they added.
I was going to say, I feel like you could probably code it to work really well, but you would need like specific stuff to do it. So
yeah, they'd have to add a sub program in it to do it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I haven't dug too deep into it. I just found out it came out this morning. And I was like, well, all right, I'll update because I've been waiting for it. Because my paid games, advertisement, my paid games, they wanted Fantasy Grounds, so they're paying. I'll run Fantasy Grounds.
Right. So other house rules and setting rules, I'm trying to think.
I have a whole PDF, so I can – anything else you tend to use. So.
Well, so I do I know you also do the Benny on a Snake Eyes.
Yes.
The fail forward. For when I do it, I make my players narrate their Snake Eyes. Like, okay, so how did you really fuck this up right now? And
I think I'm going to steal that because I like that idea.
My players, every once in a while, a player will just be like, and I'm like, well, what if we say, and like, we'll kind of like talk it out at the table. It's not always the player that rolls the Snake Eyes. Sometimes other people at the table are like, oh, well, what if this happened? And I still give the player who rolled the Snake Eyes a Benny because Snake Eyes sucks. But I've actually had players who have narrated such bad things happening to their characters that I've given them 2 bennies.
I'm down with that.
Yeah, I'm like, that is way worse than it has to be. So here's take 2 because you're probably going to die now.
Now, I have one other house rule, and this is funny because it's one of those where some people will be like, this isn't a house rule, we just do this.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many house rules are things you're just doing. But I don't know if you saw this, and you've been witness to this a couple times. I call it the pity Benny.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I've been a victim of it many times.
Because it's not just, oh, yeah, well, I feel bad for my players, I give them. No. I straight up go, I'm going to give you a pity Benny. I feel bad for you. I let it be known to the table that this Benny is out of pity. You can say you don't want it. You don't want to feel bad for me. It rarely ever happens. But then you're actively taking pity.
Yeah, I mean, I have no shame. If anyone who watches this listened to any of our old ETU recordings, people understand why I needed pity bennies.
Oh, God. That character was cursed.
I mean, literally at points. But
that's true.
I ran through like the whole Wild Hunt, which was like 2 or 3 sessions, and like 2 sessions after that with 3 wounds and 2 fatigue. Permanent. Like,
it was just rough. You couldn't get rid of it.
4 sessions. Yeah, it was not the easiest thing in the world. It was
those I didn't make you feel as bad about.
Yeah.
I was still like, I'm going to give you, I think at one point I gave you 2 pity bennies.
Yeah, well, I think
I'm going to give you a couple pity bennies because you're rolling at a -5 for everything.
Yeah.
This was by like 2 or 3 sessions into you having those.
Well, yeah, and that was like, I think it was, I forget who, I think it might have been Sandy, was like, can I please just spend my bennies on him even though I don't have common bond, please? And he was,
and there were a couple times I was like, yeah. Because he had so many bennies.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think he spent 5 on like one of my rolls. Or I spent 1 and then he spent 4. Yeah, so it was, I like the pity benny. I do the pity benny sometimes too, if things are just really not going people's way.
Yeah.
Because
I like the humor and the levity because it's not like, oh, I hate you, but
yeah,
like we all get to laugh at your failures because sometimes, actually, a lot of times, failure's the funny part.
Right.
So we get to go, here you go. And sometimes, I think sometimes part of the pity bang, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, it's a house rule, they'll morph, is a lot of times I'll also be like, or you can keep that failure and have a Benny.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do that all the time. I bribe my players.
I should probably add that to the PDF.
Yeah. I don't know. Bribery.
Go with it?
Go with it. Because I mean, coming from Fate, that's a thing in Fate, is you can tell people to do dumb shit for Fate points. And I have definitely transferred that over to Savage Worlds in whether it's a bad roll, and I'm like, if you keep it and see what happens, I'll give you a Benny. Or they're like, oh, well, maybe my character would do this. Well, they are mean or whatever. And I'm like, well, if you go and do something mean to that character, I'll give you a Benny for it. Do it. Like, it's your hindrance. If you play into it, this is what you get. I mean, you should be doing that anyway, but...
Yeah, well, by the rules now, playing into hindrances doesn't automatically give you bennies.
Yeah, yeah.
They kind of tweak that. Now it's like, give bennies for whatever you feel like.
Right. It's just like, hey, these are nice.
Which, on one hand, I like that it's like openly saying like there's more things you can give bennies for because there always has been, but at the same time, it's even more vague.
Yeah, yeah. Vagary isn't
Joker's Wild happening now, and
right.
If you have fail forward going between those two, bennies will kind of take care of themselves enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, it's a double-edged sword. I don't like vagary in rule books because like I can be vague at my table. Like, I can change things, but in a rule book, it's like people want structure.
Definitely.
At the same time, you also have, like, I've seen these players. None of my players are like this because they know that I would just say no. But I've seen players who are like, well, I'm vengeful and going to do this vengeful thing, so I need a Benny now. And it's like, okay, every time you play into a hindrance doesn't get you a Benny. That's your character. They are who your character is. And
here's the thing. When you're knowingly doing something to the detriment of yourself,
right,
it brings up a Benny. Without going on its own tangent, you will get those people who like, I take mean, I take vengeful, and all they do is make everyone else's lives miserable and want bennies for it. It's like, no, hindrances aren't, yes, they will make the entire group's life harder and more interesting, but you get bennies when they make your life harder, when they hinder you, because you're getting the reward for it.
Yeah. Yeah, just because you, like, flipped off that guy while you were driving and you're mean, I'm not going to give you a Benny. Unless that guy is, like, a serial killer and comes after you now because...
Or it was, like, a really funny moment, and we're playing a game that...
Yeah, if it's funny, of course you get a Benny. I mean, that's... Why not? Even my most serious games, there's always those moments where you're just... The whole table is falling out of their chairs because they can't control themselves. I'm trying to think of other house rules.
I was going to say, are there any rules you've been like toying with? I know you're not as much of an experimenter as me. I'll like make mechanics and test them at tables.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I do that a lot and then just don't talk about it because half of them don't work. So, I mean, we've talked about the sanity thing. You and I bounced that back and forth for the project I'm working on.
Yeah, did you see the discussion of sanity in the PDF I put?
Yeah.
I actually really like that idea.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I haven't used it yet, and the project I'm working on, it's not making it into, but it's something I'm going to try out at some point. I actually have a game gesticulating. And
so to clarify, because we're talking about nebulous things the listeners don't know about, and not talking about like Mike's work with the project and all that's... You were contracted to do a thing. We're not going to talk good or bad about it because.
Well, no, I mean I'll probably plug it at some point, but it's not ready yet.
It's not ready. But our conversations kind of sparked into something I have toyed with back and forth before, but they're essentially mental wounds or like social wounds.
Right.
And the newest one, because I don't know if you got to read that, is there's 2 more defenses. Reason, which is half your smarts plus 2, and resolve, which is half your spirit plus 2. And what attacks it is more nebulous. It's more like a role play thing. When people want to try and like talk someone down from fighting, or, you know, a ghost is coming at them and they know they can't beat it, so they're going to try and trick it or confuse it and stuff. And it's not just, oh, we're looking to distract it or leave it vulnerable, because the tests are much more for like to set up for combat.
Right.
And social conflicts assume a back and forth.
Right.
And sometimes it's you're trying to get into a social conflict and it starts out as a one-sided conversation.
Well, yeah, it's like a good example of that would be to think of like the Hulk in Marvel trying to kill everybody, like, loses it, swinging his fist, trying to knock everyone out, and then people trying to talk him down and calm him down. They're not really fighting back because A, they can't because it's the Hulk, and B, I mean, that's not the end goal. They're trying to get the fight to stop without fighting. So,
and technically, you could like wedge in a dramatic task, which is what I used to do for these.
Sure.
And especially with the new dramatic task rules where you got to figure out, all right, well, how many successes is it supposed to be and all that. They're supposed to be much more well designed, and they're kind of supposed to be a centerpiece. They don't feel as good at wedging them in, even though now they do have better rules for like a fight happening and integrating it, but they should be planned, not so spur of the moment. So instead what this is, if your character is basically like trying to make an argument using reason, like, hey, 2 guards at the front, like at this door, it's not a good idea to fight us. We're not trying to scare you. We're not looking to intimidate you. We're just, look, you don't want to do this.
This is bad for everybody.
And it's like, yeah, tests, if you get a raise, they'd be shaken, which means you can like run by them, but they're not actually out of combat. Like you didn't actually talk them out of something. And I don't think social conflict should happen for extras. So instead, you make the roll. This isn't like fighting. You don't roll to hit. You make, say it's a persuasion roll or a taunt or an intimidate. It's much more flexible. If it's an argument using reasons, using facts, maybe even using academics and facts, you target reason. If you meet or exceed, it's just like toughness. They're shaken. If you get a raise, they suffer a wound, but it's a mental wound. And if you are trying to go with empathy, talk to them emotionally. I have a daughter. We don't want to do this. A lot of times I actually think a lot of intimidation checks are more emotion, not factual.
Right.
You go against resolve. And it's the exact same thing. You match or go up, shaken. You get a raise, wound. But there's only one track of mental wounds. Now, with tooling with this, and this is a house rule that's still very experimental. We're just now toying with it. I did it a little bit in my ETU game my wife and Dan are playing in.
Oh, nice.
But the big thing I'm ruling is whichever's higher, your wound penalty or your mental wound penalty, is the penalty you take. They don't stack.
Makes sense. I was going to say, that way you don't run an ETU game where my character has a -8 instead of a -5.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But not just that. And you might be thinking, well, but they're not taking wounds. Why would they have penalties? Well, you've weakened their resolve. You've weakened their confidence.
Right.
And they could either just be like shaken, but not shaken to the point of they can't act, but just kind of off a little now. They could be second guessing why they're doing what they're doing. And so far it's worked really well because for extras, all you got to do is get that raise. Or the group can team up and literally shake and shake. It's a wound. And it's effectively they're out of the fight. They're incapacitated, but it's not by damage.
Yeah.
Which means you can make more social games, which I like.
Well, yeah, not to go back to Fate, but Fate has that physical stress track and the mental stress track, and you can take people out either way, and just because you're taken out doesn't mean you're dead. It just means you're not involved in the conflict anymore. Now,
from that is where birth, and kind of all that got rewritten today and yesterday when I was forming it all and trying to put it into the PDF, because I wanted the PDF for my own notes for the show.
Right.
And I was like, I'll put it on the Patreon so they know it's there and all of that stuff. But then when it comes to like fear's never about reason. That's not fear. So we go, fear's always an attack against resolve, and we do the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
We go, and then what I did for that, and this is the one I'm still toying with, is essentially you make the fear check. If you fail, you don't roll on the fear table. I kind of don't like the fear table.
Yeah.
Instead, whatever the penalty was to the fear check is that many D6 of damage. If it's no penalty, they're just shaken. It won't be anything more than shaken if it's a flat fear check, which I think's fine.
Yeah.
But a -1 is 1d6. A -2 is 2d6. And they could get crazy. And it could be like 4, 5, 6 d6 in games like Deadlands.
Right. Oh.
But at the same time, you see something terrifying enough, it knocks you out.
Yeah.
And it's not, oh, you're knocked out. It removed your resolve. You have no will to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you get incapacitated, the thing I'm toying with, and this gets in the sanity. In fact, my sanity write-up was, it's exactly the same as fear, except it's reason and smarts instead. But you roll on the incapacitation table and you replace injuries with phobias or quirks at the GM's discretion. And then they're not permanent, because the thing is all the phobias you get on the fear table are always permanent.
Right.
Maybe you're just you're weirded out by this and like it's scarring to you until you overcome it.
Right.
And it builds in its own healing mechanic.
Yeah. Even in real life, a lot of phobias are irrational fears most of the time, but people can overcome them.
And they don't typically get them instantly. The ones you get from instant trauma tend to also recover faster. It's long-form trauma that scars you permanently. But at the same time, you can get permanent injuries, so you can get permanent phobias. Mm-hmm. And I like that. And again, like I alluded to or kind of flat out said, sanity is the exact same thing, but resolve. And what's cool is then we do a Lovecraft thing. You basically give them a sanity modifier instead of a fear modifier.
Right. That makes sense.
Just scratch out a word, write it. Mechanically, they all work the same. And I have a thing where the GM can determine if in your game you allow soak or not. I would.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to soak damage to your resolve, you roll spirit. You roll the associated attribute. You look to soak damage to your sanity, you roll smarts. Just keep it all. A lot of people tend to think a unified mechanic means the exact same numbers and the exact same dice. It's the exact same concept.
Right.
And toughness, resolve, and reason are all the same concept using the same math from a different attribute. Right. But mechanically, they run the same.
Yeah. I have a game where I think it's, like I said, it's gestating. I'm not sure if it's ever going to happen or not, but it's something I'm thinking about running for a group at some point.
I will say, and I bring this up in the PDF. Little hint, guys, the PDF is actually a preview to a book we've been working on, too. The big old book of house rules. I've talked to you a bit about that book.
Yeah.
But, which is why so much of this has been written out. But fear and sanity are basically how you attack the players. I don't suggest doing mental attacks or emotional attacks against players. I feel like that could kind of just be a player-facing thing unless you're really invested in, like, your game is strictly a social game.
Yeah.
Just because it's about breaking people down in their wills and their opinions. Just like social conflicts, nothing in there talks about the players changing their opinions.
Right. It's
just about changing NPC opinions. So kind of the attacks is the player side, fear and sanity is the GM side.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anything that takes agency away from players generally isn't fun for the players. When you're like, well, your character has to believe this now. The player's just like, oh, well, I thought it was my character. So
exactly.
Obviously, there is a line between good role playing and stuff like that too, where your character should believe this now. Your character has literally no reason to distrust this person, but the player is metagaming like that. But I feel like that's a very different situation, and that's
still one of those things. Though you can tell the player as much as they want; they're going to make the actions they make.
Right.
Like you can't. And I definitely felt this way because I started writing those rules specifically because frequently, again, I run a lot of ETU, which isn't combat centric. So we would get a lot of stuff of like, can we just talk them out of it?
Yeah.
In fact, if you've never done ETU, this could be spoilers, but I didn't fully tell you how Sweat Lodge ended, did I?
I don't think so.
With that, because we got part 2. So Dan's wife actually tried to talk Tyson down because he was like coming at them with a knife. Now, luckily, I'd already been playing this because this isn't the first time this happened to me. Right. But like this threatening person's coming at you with a knife. Yeah, technically you can make a test if you get a raise, they're shaken before everybody wails on him, but they didn't want to hurt him.
Yeah.
Because they also very quickly realized, and it's one of the few ETU campaigns where they realized, wait, we're freshmen, he's a security guard. Beating him up's a bad idea. No one will believe us. Every other group has been like, he's coming at us. We got to fight him.
Yeah.
Side tangent with that, the roost burned down.
Classic.
Well, first of all, I did make it harder. I've been doing some spins on it. Tyson was actually acting because he was possessed by Nina, and she was the real villain. So they also had to face a ghost.
Nice.
And I gave Nina some powers. Because, like, I basically took that room fire thing, so she had a burst power.
Nice.
And she had puppet, because she could possess. So they were dealing with a pretty tough enemy. My wife, or no, not my wife, Beth didn't play. Susan asked if there was a forklift, because they were in the loading bay. that they talk about in the book that no one's ever gone in any time I've ran it.
Yeah.
And she was like, is there like a forklift in here? I'm like, probably not. You know, why not? They got to load like gym equipment and floats and stuff.
Yeah.
So she drove a forklift through the bolted metal doors.
Nice.
And once they got the doors down, they booked it and they saw Nina couldn't follow them through the doors. They had already figured out like there were fire runes and stuff was starting to go bad. I'm like, and they're like, we wait for the cops because they already called 911. I'm like, okay, you're going to wait for the cops. Are you going in at all to try and help people? Or doing? No, not till the cops get here. I'm like, there's an explosion inside the roost. But we got the door down. Did anyone make it? Everybody roll a D12 and add them together. 40 people come out. Yes, we saved 40 people. How many were in there? Well, it's about a third of the freshman class. Each used kind of loosely based off Texas A&M in a lot of ways. So I'm like, what's the freshman class of Texas A&M? 3,800 or something. I'm like, yeah, and this was the more popular one, so we'll do a quarter instead of or we'll do half instead of a third because they had the concert and the pizza. It's like, so like 2,000 people died.
Oh,
yeah,
that's not great.
So they're now the freshman 44.
Nice.
It's a group of 4 and 40 made it. So
yeah.
I'm gonna set that up as a thing. Which I'm really hoping, and I'm sure Susan and Dan are going to watch this and hear, but kind of the thing I'm hoping, because we're running a really fast-paced game, like advance every session, we're just kind of going through. Also very quickly realize I'm not running the plot point campaign.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to set up where hopefully if they take the bait, by senior year, there's going to have to be a big battle with the entire freshman 44 against evil. Like a la graduation day at Buffy.
Yeah. Well, how many of the 44 survive? Because
exactly.
There might be that bad guy who starts picking them off for some reason.
Like Tyson? Oh, no. Tyson died. That's right. Tyson died.
But I mean...
no. I think it was Dan's wife. One of them took a swing at him and was like, well, I just want him in the hands. This was after he got pepper sprayed in the face. Oh, no. It was Susan. That's right. It was Susan, and she had a knife. Dan's wife pepper sprayed him in the face, and she's like, I want to slash at his hands with the knife. And she rolled insane damage. And then I was like, wait, his hands are over his face. Oh. So we ruled, like, because he was pepper sprayed, he just went, ah! And she slit his throat by accident. Whoops. And just, like, killed Tyson.
Yeah. That actually happened in my first ETU game, but where they were, I stole your camp idea for like our first session, or first 2 sessions, I don't remember. And they were all like 11-year-olds or 12-year-olds at a summer camp. And at one point, one of the characters, like they had like a pocket knife, and there was like one of like the possessed counselors coming at them. And they're like, I'm going to try and like scare him off with this knife. Like I want to attack him. And they rolled like insane damage. Like, it was like a 46 damage on this extra. And I was like, you just gutted, like you just snapped and just stabbed the hell out of this guy. And like, it was as a 12-year-old, but
yeah,
luckily their characters don't have a lot of memories from there. But so the person, because I only had them take 2 hindrances, and let them change one afterwards, like once they grew up and went to ET. But it was kind of like an it thing where they forget as they grow up. Because of like the benevolent god creature that helps them forget.
Yeah, I really should have added that to when I ran the camp. Because them coming in completely knowing about Supernatural completely changed the dynamic.
Yeah, but so she really like embraced that with her character though, and like changed her hindrances to make her like mean and like kind of disaffected. And she didn't know why. It was just like mental trauma from that, but her character doesn't really remember it.
Yes.
So it like really informed the character. It was really cool. But they kind of remember some more stuff now because we just ended freshman year, and like they've gone back and like they know stuff happened that was supernatural, and now it's like supernatural confirmed because freshman year. I mean, how long is it going to stay a secret? Like they're fighting demons now. So, but they still don't remember the exact details. Spoilers. sophomore year might bring up some very specific details.
Nice.
Like
Yeah, you always got to bring it back.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's fun. We're trying to figure out when to start sophomore year. But
nice.
Yeah. But anyway.
Anyway.
So house rules.
Yeah, back to house rules. Any others you've been toying with?
Well, funny thing is, most of the house rules I was using before SWADE are rules in SWADE now.
Yeah.
I used athletics already. I had core skills already in my sci-fi game because everybody started their space like military. It's like Star Trek, basically. So I'm like, well, you guys are going to start with a D4 in this, and this.
Yeah.
And then SWADE comes out and it's like, you all start with a D4 in this, and this. And I'm like...
Apocalypse Prevention Incorporated basically has that too because you have like the training packages.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anything where you're supposed to be like units and professional, it's all, well, you were each trained for jobs. So yeah, you can pick who your character is, but your organization trained you to do something.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what house rules I play around with now.
We'll say the one I'm excited to try now, and I don't know how often it's going to come up, but is the grip rule.
Yeah.
I did, where it's just like all the other, because the thing was I kind of tested myself of, can I just make a drive stat for all the attributes at this point once I was doing that? Because why not? And like see what you can do. Because I want to cut the rolls down in the game. And grip essentially removes opposed rolls for like grapple and disarm. So instead it's half your strength plus 2, and you can make like a cold shot to disarm. If you succeed, they drop the weapon. And then what I did was, if you get a raise in melee, if you get a raise and have a free hand, you can have the weapon or item in your hands. Which sounds like, well, melee is already really strong. Like, but the thing is you have to get a raise and you have to have a free hand. And in melee, a lot of melee characters won't. So, and ranged, if you get a raise, the item flies 1d6 squares away.
Nice.
I think typically that's the more powerful thing. Because you already have the item you're using, whatever you're using to do it. Yeah. And then I used it to simplify the push rules. But the one I really love, it's one of those things I actually always find interesting, is so many games, and Savage Worlds does include, where it's like, oh, if you get knocked off a ledge or something, you can make a roll to grab the ledge.
Sure.
In Savage Worlds, the GM can say, oh, you get an agility check to try and grab the ledge in the last second. And then, it's a check to climb back up. What if you don't climb up right away? So grip is the number of rounds you can hold on to like a ledge.
That's cool. That makes sense.
But then what I did was, as an option, if you want to make things more tense, if there's any penalties to the check to climb up, that gets subtracted from your grip as well.
Yeah.
So like a rock wall at -2, if you have a grip of a 5, which is a D6 strength, you can only hold on for 3 rounds before you start slipping. Because I'm like, it's simple. It's really simple, but it adds a clock.
Yeah, in general, I like that too, because, I mean, you and I have talked before. I like to cut down the number of rolls in my game as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I think derived stats help with that a lot. And that's probably something I'll play. I'll probably test out all those rules because
the other big one, I forgot to bold one of them, is I'm not gonna lie. This one actually came out of, well, I just need one for agility because I've done them all.
Yeah.
So I did dodge. But it replaces evasion. Mm-hmm. Don't make a check to evade. If something calls for evasion, they don't roll target number 4. They roll versus your evasion.
Right.
And like slow-moving ranged weapons, and I did do a thing like maybe make an edge for bullets and stuff. Because the thing I also have, these are all works in progress. So there's notes like, hey, maybe try this. Make an edge so that when you take the defend action, on top of it giving you +4 parry, it kind of bugs me that defend doesn't do anything against ranged attacks.
Yeah, I agree.
Because things like serpentine maneuvers are a real thing. There is defensive maneuvers you can take against range. So if you take the defend action, which I also believe needs to be like your only action anyways.
Yeah.
Ranged attacks go against your dodge instead of target number 4.
That makes sense.
Now, I made a note where, and what I think I'm going to have to do is if melee and range are happening at the same time, when you take defend, you have to choose which one.
That makes sense, too.
Because the actions you make against ranged attacks are not the same as the way you defend with martial combat.
If I'm just doing this in martial combat, I'm probably not gonna.
You're not getting a parry bonus. That's right.
I'm just gonna look like an idiot.
And if you're busy blocking someone's blows, it's easier to shoot you.
Right.
But by having that option, it also means modern games where it's like all firefights and stuff. Now defend gets used.
Right. Defend is useful now. Hey, this just reminds me of. You asked me about house rules I use. I feel like I use so many very small things that I just completely forget because it's like I use them and they're part of the game and I just kind of that's my Savage Worlds game. But
saying, well, no, this is how we do it is a house rule.
Yeah. With disarming now in SWADE, that was a big issue in the community because now you can draw weapons as a free action.
Mm-hmm. So now they did rewrite from difficult locations off the floor was listed under the difficult location.
Did they do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
That was in 4.2.
Oh, was it? I thought it was later than that.
4.2 was the last one, right?
4.3 was the last one.
It was either 4.2 or 4.3. Either way, in my version, it says off the ground in the difficult locations.
I didn't actually read 4.3, so that's why I thought it was that. Or why I didn't think it was 4.2. But anyway, yeah, that was something that I was already house ruling just because I was like, that's stupid. Disarming's useless now.
Yeah.
I also like, it's not a house rule. It's just a new rule that, since we're talking about it, I like that you can target people's weapons now and destroy them.
Yeah.
That there's actually rules for that.
Well, what's funny and what's weird, though, is when you're attacking a weapon, it's the object breaking rules.
Right.
So the damage don't ace.
Right.
But by their disarm rules, the damage do ace for the roll that is opposed.
Yeah.
What I did with the grip, what rules for that, for the disarm, is you can get the raised dice, but the dice don't ace.
Yeah.
It's a modified version of the object rules, not a modified damage roll.
Yeah.
But that means you're actually more likely to be able to break objects in combat. But I like that feels very Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
Like breaking swords and stuff. So, and at the very least, then you just go, we just ignore this one die. Rather than, wait, what was my first dice rolled? Because sometimes it explodes forever and you got to remember.
Right.
I took that into account when I did the disarm rules. I'm like, now we have weapon breaking right there as part of the same roll.
Yeah, I really like that. And that was something that I had allowed people to do in the past, but in Deluxe, it was not as well
defined,
yeah.
Now they kind of word it. I tried to word it a little better of -2 for something the size of a sword, -4 for something the size of a pistol.
Right.
Because they say -4 for targeting the hand.
Yeah.
And -2 for targeting the weapon. But like a 9mm should be the same penalty as targeting the hand.
Yeah, it's not really much bigger. And you have to hit the same area. I don't know.
Now, also the rule I do is since it's only the object damage, the target never takes damage on a disarm. I don't like the target taking damage on a disarm. Now, if you're like, well, but I cut his hand off, that's the GM giving a result to the damage you did, not to you disarming him.
Right. Unless you're literally trying to disarm him.
At which point, we shouldn't be looking at the disarm rolls in a strength check. Either he locked your arm off or not. Doesn't matter how strong he is.
Yeah. I just
Again, grip's not perfect, but I think it's going to streamline our games.
Yeah. I think I'm going to try these out with something just because I like the idea. It would be nice to have, I don't know if anyone's given thought to making a character sheet with all these stats on them.
If somebody would do that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I might know somebody.
Yeah. And then there's only one other house rule I've been toying with.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen it. We actually talked about it for a long time, but it's how I'm integrating Monster of the Week into the game.
Yes.
And it's retooling investigation, like just investigating in general, and networking.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to lie, I kind of hate that networking's one rule. And you just know everything you wanted to know.
Yeah.
Now, yes, people have said, like, well, but I break it down. So by the book, it's one roll, and you find out everything on a success, not even on a raise. Which, again, like, okay, some games, it's not about that. And you want to gloss through, and you want it faster. But other games, that is the game.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's kind of a weird thing with SWADE, I feel like, is that they've done a lot to make the game more narrative focused while also changing certain things mechanically to make them so you just gloss over the narrative part. So it's like, with that networking, it's one roll. okay, you talked to 40 people and now you know all the information.
It's weird because it feels like it's more narrative focused, like almost kind of making people more comfortable in narrative if you're already writing a saying that isn't narrative focused, like fantasy and a lot of types of pulp and stuff will now be more narrative focused. And it kind of fucks over investigation and mysteries, which is like ETU and Deadlands Noir.
Yeah.
Like, SWADE has some big issues with those settings.
Yeah.
Unless you fiddle with the rules.
I was going to say, I'm sure when they release their updated ETU stuff or updated Noir stuff, they're going to have new rules for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Because, I mean, Deadlands Noir has a fair number of rules about that already.
Oh, yeah. There's actually rules in that I'm surprised didn't make it to SWADE. Yeah. Like, Knockout Blows made it, which I love, but why didn't interrogation and, like, tailing?
Yeah, it's a very good toolbox kind of setting to, like, pull rules from, and I feel like it's overlooked a lot.
Dude, I bought it in hardcover just so I can have it as a resource. I don't even run Deadlands Noir. I've run the actual setting, like, twice. I use the book all the time.
Yeah.
I also found it on Amazon for, like, $7 in hardcover, so I picked that shit up.
That actually reminded me of a really obvious house rule that I'm forgetting. I've added empathy to my games, which works in the same way.
As a skill, right?
As a skill, yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't yet, but we've discussed this. I like that you have to just use your actual instinct to figure out. But that's also assuming your GM's going to role play what characters say.
Right.
I mean, then you're kind of playing like LA Noir. Like, yeah. And that's how I do it.
Yeah.
But for GMs who don't do that and don't want to like act out characters who are lying and give tells, knowing like purposefully put tells in and stuff, you need a skill for it.
Yeah. I mean, and I still do that in my games. I feel like so I used to use Streetwise for that. So
yeah, Streetwise was great for that.
Yeah. Ruled as written, you use notice for your characters to tell if somebody might be lying because you look for subtle physical tells. And I think we've talked about this. I don't know if we ever talked about this on here before, but I know we have. I think that is completely stupid because you can be the most observant person in the world and have the emotional intelligence of a rock and vice versa.
It's exactly why the healer edge uses spirit.
Right.
Because empathy is its own thing.
Right. So I don't know. I use the word empathy for the skill because that's what it's called in Fate, and I come from
bet I like that better than sense motive.
Yeah. Well.
Sense motive sounds like fucking superpower.
Yeah, I mean,
spider sense motive. Like,
yeah. So in my games before, my house rule was, well, instead we'll use Streetwise to determine if you're getting any weird vibes from this person. Because my idea is, well, if you're able to network and learn all this stuff using Streetwise, you should know if the information's valid or not.
That's how I've actually used it. It's not so much like an empathy thing, but back when we had Streetwise, right. And I don't like the Streetwise edge, I've said that. I don't like that specifically on like shady people.
Yeah.
But if you're good about gathering info and stuff, you can possibly tell if people are lying because you can basically cross-reference it with things you've overheard and rumors you have and stuff.
Yeah, you feel parse that information that you then and that's why I don't 100% love calling it empathy, because I also use it for that kind of stuff too. But if one of my characters is talking to a person who's giving them a lot of information, they're like, well, I want to roll empathy. I'm never going to just say to my player, unless they've like blow their roll out of the water, I'm very rarely going to just say, oh yeah, that person's obviously lying. But I'll say like, this is how they feel. Like they're obviously nervous about something.
Yeah.
Not giving you all the information. That's usually what I use it for. Or they're not giving you correct information because they think they're saying the right thing, but you know that like this, and this. So maybe their memory is messed up or like their recollections. For example, eyewitnesses for crimes and stuff in real life are notoriously unreliable.
Yeah.
People don't remember.
And people can be completely factual in what they're telling, or I should say, completely truthful in what they're telling you and not be factual.
Right. So
that's a big GM tool, like even for D&D and stuff, where there's a lot more things of like, you know, if they're lying to you. I mean, hell, in Monster of the Week, luckily no one's taken. There's a move that just lets you straight up know if anyone's lying to you.
Yeah.
Always know.
Yeah. So that's I run an ETU game. So in ETU, we're going to talk to this person who thinks they solved the Needler. Let's get some information. And the person starts telling you all this stuff like, oh, yeah, I saw them. They were the size of a horse and had giant horns on their head and this and that. I'm like, and they roll empathy. I'm like, you can tell this person is embellishing or this person.
Like there's layers of truth in here.
Right.
But the rule's not going to tell you what is and isn't truthful.
Right.
They'll tell you the level of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of this, and I might actually need to wedge empathy in.
Yeah.
I'm so against. I hate the you roll and automatically know, but I think I need to use it how you're using it.
Yeah. And so my other thing with that though is also like we've had this talk too is in a lot of games we don't expect players to be good at most of the stuff their characters are good at.
Yes.
But for some reason we always expect if you're persuading someone that the player make a persuasive argument.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of the same thing.
Clint has straight up said, like, there's a lot of rules around combat because you can't do that at the table while the role play you can.
Right.
But there is this fair argument of, but I'm not playing me.
Right.
So I get it.
So, and then if you make the argument, well, like just to play devil's advocate, if you say, well, I like my players to figure it out on their own with or without a skill, then I could also just argue what's the point of having a persuasion skill if you're going to make your players make a persuasive argument every time.
Yeah, which honestly, we didn't get too deep into it, but my advanced networking stuff, because we kind of got on a tangent, covers this. Because what it is it's researching. I'm not going to go into all it because there's investigating the scene, monster research, magic research, and quick assessment. But basically what these are is, with the exception of quick assessment, which is an actual combat thing, you do it as an action. They take time, and your first success gives you a specific question that gets answered. And that question needs to be answered before the other questions. So stuff like investigating the scene, I think is the best one, is you have the core question. Once anyone gets one success, you have what happened here.
Yeah.
At which point they basically go, well, what happened here? And the GM truthfully, within the lens of how they're investigating, tells you the rough idea of what happened. Like, it looks like there was a confrontation. You see footprints that are causing a scuffle. There's some blood stains here. You're seeing violence happen here.
Yeah.
Then, once that question's been answered by anyone, because I also tried to write it in the thing where I knew there was always one question that had to be asked. But once you do that, and if you relay that to the group, they know that. They're no longer looking for the basics. So then either every raise or other successes lets you ask, where did they go? What's the best way into here? What's the best way out of here? What dangers are still present? And what is being concealed? And yes, sometimes there will be questions where it goes, what's being concealed? Where nothing's being concealed here. Well, then do I get a different question? No, you were looking for the wrong thing.
Well, yeah, you
where
learned
did they
something.
Go doesn't tell you who they are.
Right.
It tells you, well, you see footprints going this way, and it can kind of lead you to the next scene.
Right.
And stuff like that. Now, granted, mine was written with ETU in mind, so then there's monster research. I have some notes for, like, non-monsters.
Yeah.
To try and get ideas of, like, the identity instead of, it's a werewolf. You find some clues that point to this is a security guard.
Mm-hmm.
You use the same concept, but instead what it does is it gives them a list of questions. And it's this dialogue back and forth, because that's how Monster of the Week does it. And I love that, because the dice roll just give them a pool of questions, and they have to be economical and smart with their questions. Because especially, again, if you're playing a mystery game, the game is solving the mystery. Mm-hmm. The game isn't rolling dice. There's that. And I actually only have one other house rule that I've been toying with, and it's awareness. It's my one other derived stat, and it's skill-based, and it's notice. And it does give notice a little more power. But it's half notice plus 2. And what is this? I don't like opposed rolls for stealth.
Yeah.
I think again, I'm one of those people, I think opposed rolls for the most part slow the game down. I roll, I look to see what it is. You decide if you do a Benny or not, because you have to decide that before I roll. And then the other person rolls, and they decide if they do a Benny. Where I go, this is their awareness, this is the target number. And I think it fits just as much because, it's not target number 4, but parry's not target number 4.
Right.
It's using the parry concept.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about that, though, is I can have listed down all my players' awarenesses, and I don't call for notice rolls for ambushes.
Yeah.
Because, yes, there's times where you want to be fair and be like, all right, everybody give me a notice roll. Well, you all failed. Ignore, forget that I asked for that. Or in, like, investigation games, the really perceptive players, you should be able to go, don't even roll. These are the things you find out automatically.
Yeah. And that's also, to come back to the ambush that you mentioned a minute ago, that makes like the danger sense edge a million times better.
It's +2 to awareness now.
And yeah, well, or alternative.
Yeah, that's right. It goes. Sorry, I was thinking alertness.
Yeah.
You're the only one. You have danger sense. You're the only one where I go, give me a notice roll. Yeah. Because even if they fail, that like something's coming. You don't get to know what it is, but you had danger sense.
Right.
So that meta knowledge that players can say they separate, there's always going to be at least a sliver of it. You cannot fully separate it, especially in something that quick that's going to shift.
Yeah.
That little sliver just plays into the edge and gives you the feeling of the edge. So
and I like that for that edge too, because I feel like that's one of those edges where I can't speak for other GMs, but personally, I find that it's a little vague about when you should and shouldn't use it. Because
ETU is a little better because you have to have psychically sensitive for it. Yeah. So once you put the psychic trapping on, it helps.
Absolutely. But, like in SWADE, or at least in Deluxe, it might have been rewritten a little bit in SWADE. I think it was. But the idea is just like you always get a notice roll, even when you shouldn't, in case of an ambush. And then I'm like, but
shouldn't everybody get some chance?
I would say a lot of times I would give my so sometimes it would translate in I give that player 2 rolls.
Yes.
Other times it would just be like, okay, there is literally no way you could know about this. But
how I've always done it is if there's a roll for the situation send the edge, I give them a second roll if they fail.
Yeah.
But I'm like, everybody gets the roll. Typically what I do is you get your danger sense roll first.
Right.
If you fail, we give everyone a roll.
Yeah.
That way they get the chance to be the star first. Right. But yeah.
Well, and also it's like, okay, well, danger sense guy knows something's up, so let's all pause. Yeah. Versus we're all rolling notice to see if we actually dealt in this initiative. But in my experience, there are very few ambushes, like even like story-wise, thematically, that I don't think players should get a chance to roll against.
Yes.
There are a few. Like there are always outliers, but I feel like most situations there's going to be some possibility that somebody could figure this out, even if there are penalties or what have you.
Yeah. And then the only other tweak I did to make that work is any bonuses or penalties to notice when it comes to the stealth side of things, I just flip them to stealth. So if there's dim lighting and all the guards would have -2, I don't change the derived stat. I just say, well, if they would have -2 notice, you have +2 stealth.
Exactly.
Because the math is the same. We just flipped where it was.
Yeah.
But that also means they have alertness. Take -2 to your stealth rolls. What's funny is I could just as easily with edges put that on awareness, but I like the psychological effect of going, no, it's a penalty to how stealthy you are.
Yeah. I had something earlier, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just want to say this now because I'm sure we will get comments on this video. Some of your things, like the derived stats and changing that a little bit, will obviously affect certain edges that already exist.
Yes.
I'm just saying
why there's house rules and not official. Like you have to go in and you have to figure out what does and doesn't work, and you need to tweak them. Like I was saying, alertness will just give you +2 awareness. Like
I had an example in my head earlier, and I'm like, I know somebody's going to listen to this and comment this and nitpick it. So that was more of a disclaimer that, like, yeah, obviously there are broader changes that these affect.
Now, I want to reiterate this because I've mentioned it, but I'm going to flat out say it too. With the exceptions of the ones at the beginning where I said, all of these are still being tested.
Right.
These are the things we're toying with. So if there's like, well, I found a hole in it, well, this is why you test things.
Yeah.
But with that, I think we've rambled long enough, even after editing. Do you have any other house rules? Because I've exhausted a whole PDF I wrote. So
yeah, man, they made them all regular rules in SWADE.
No.
Core skills.
Well, I guess if we're bringing up those, because also a lot of what they brought in were saying rules. I want to give a special mention. I guess we'll do 2 mentions. I'm trying to be done before 2 as well.
Yeah,
but first of all, the fast healing. I actually really love the fast healing. That make a healing roll every day. And it's not because I want my characters to heal faster. If natural healing was every week, not every 5 days, I'd use it. But the 5 days, and I get that that's closer to accurate. It's a different day of the week every week. It's all this shifting. Every day's easier. I just think it streamlines the game. It makes it, again, does it make it faster, more furious, or more fun without diluting the other 2? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Support. That's my other house rule that made it into SWADE. Support roles.
Okay.
Thanks, SWADE, for just codifying everything I do.
I will say, I actually tend to ignore the max 4 on support.
I usually do, too.
I do keep the max +2 from one player.
Yeah.
But I hate he already has his maximum bonus, so I shouldn't help.
So I'll just sit
in game, you wouldn't think that.
Right.
So I don't like mechanics that then kind of, I know it doesn't force the players to, but players feel like they have to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
To stay in character. So
yeah, I always allowed like multiple skills for support. Like it used to just be you have to use the same skill. And I always thought that was stupid, so I always did it the other way.
I do agree you have to be trained in whatever skill you're trying to use.
Yeah. And
you gotta know what you're doing. Like
apply to any role. So these were all things
as long as it can make sense.
Well, yeah.
And yes, it's like, well, but a player could justify anything. Yes, but they have to work to justify it and make it good, and they're putting the work in, so
Right.
Oh,
Very
sorry.
much a yes and or a yes but GM. I rarely tell my players no.
But yeah, the one thing I wanted to bring up, because it caused some heat in Facebook a few days ago, is the skill point thing.
Yeah.
The 15 skill points for modern, because somebody went on this whole thing of like, I don't agree with this whole idea that less medieval or that people in the past were dumber. First of all, the setting rule is more points. The standard is 12. It's not saying someone's dumber. It's saying someone else would have more skill points, which isn't saying they're smarter, first of all.
Right.
But saying people in the future are more educated is not the same as saying people in the past are less educated. Yeah. This sounds like, well, when you take it at face value, it does, but the connotations are different.
Yeah. Well, even from a gameplay perspective, like take realism out of it 100% because
which is what I was going to do.
Arguments, but there are so many. Like if you look at the skill list, there are multiple skills on there that just aren't used in like a medieval setting.
Let's first of all point out. Yeah, let's first of all, the hacking was one, and that's the obvious one.
Yeah.
But let's point out, it doesn't say like the 20th century onward. It's a little nebulous, but it's essentially anything industrialized onward.
Yeah.
Yes, hacking, electronics, and piloting simply wouldn't exist. That's 3 skill. 3 skill points? 3 skills? It's almost like you'd have the same number of potentially untrained skills or something. Weird. And this isn't even taking into like the likelihood of someone having academics and stuff. That's up for debate because what academics would shift.
Right.
But there's 3 skills that absolutely wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Wow. Some people were saying, oh, it's to appease the people and make a halfway point between the core skill or the core skills or not. If that were the case, it would have been 10 to 15.
Right.
Because we talked this, and I actually theorized that was going to happen. But then there's the other big one. Because again, 12 is core, 15 is optional. They needed a 15 skill point setting option to convert pre-made characters that they sell.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot, and yes, you still have to convert, and the skill list change, so things have to convert anyways. It's a lot easier to keep the skill points the same and then add the core skills than to add the core skills and restructure the skills.
Yeah.
Like, you're already going to have a new skill list. You're going to have the core skills, which is not equivalent to the skill points because they have to go in specific areas. And one of them is a skill that didn't exist before.
Right.
And you would have to have a whole new set of starting skill points. They could just remove one with a setting rule. So why wouldn't they? Yeah, the wording saying it's modern, it's a good excuse because most of Pinnacle settings are modern. What Pinnacle settings aren't modern? Not what Savage World settings. They don't have to worry about the third-party ones. Yeah. What Pinnacle ones? Yes, there's one coming with Deadlands. Was it Deadlands Dark Ages?
Dark Ages, yeah.
But that's already going to be swayed.
Yeah.
Like, guys, that's what it's about. It wasn't saying people in medieval are dumber. It's actually saying the standard's 12. But if you feel like they need more skills because they'll have more skills to choose from,
yeah,
there's 15. Or maybe if you're using skill specialization, you now can justify giving them a few extra skills. Maybe those actually balance out and are well thought out.
That actually made me think of another setting or house rule that I use.
What's that?
Specializations. I haven't used it too much, but I have my own specialization rules just because I don't like the standard ones because I don't like giving people penalties to everything. It's pretty simple, though. It's just once you hit a D8, you choose a specialization.
Like, and that's the only thing that goes above a D8?
Well, no, and everything else you roll aside from that thing. So say you're, I don't know, say it's fighting and your specialization is swords.
Yeah.
I don't know. And you have a D8 fighting, you pick up an axe that you're not specialized in, you roll a D6 instead. You just roll the die type lower.
Okay, so then once it's a D10, it's a 10-8.
Right.
So it's always just one die type. I like that. The thing I'm doing...
Instead of gaining a skill point, you can pick up a new specialization.
Mm-hmm. So. The thing I'm doing is instead, and this doesn't force specializations, but it's talked about in 2 weeks from now when the episode I recorded 2 weeks ago hits, but is the defining interests.
Oh, yeah, I use that all the time.
I cannot believe defining interests didn't go into Suede.
Yeah.
I know they came from a third party, but so many third-party products use them, and it fixes the knowledge skill problem.
Yeah. Hey, see, I said there are so many house rules that I use that I don't even remember that I used. That's another one. I'm using
defining interests in ETU to fix the majors.
Yeah.
And yes, I know I've seen some people that are like, well, I just determined if their major would have fallen under electronics or academics, and I just let them roll that. That defeats the purpose.
Right.
One of the majors was already pre-med, and they actively chose to not let them use healing to heal. It's supposed to be its own skill.
Yeah.
So for me, this is the closest. It also then covers being undeclared.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used defining interests since I heard of them like over a year ago in every game I play. And
they fix Suede.
Them and yeah.
I don't want to come off as like bashing Suede, but my biggest problem was where I think they zigged when they should have zagged with the conversions and really dropping some stuff that screws up compatibility. Mm-hmm. Defining interest fix. So I guess that doesn't get talked about to our listeners for 2 weeks, but I do use those.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying those because I like getting to have the things like, what about that character that took knowledge cooking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like that can kind of be its own catchphrase. What about the character that took it? Because it so perfectly encompasses, you would use survival for cooking, but a cook would not know a lot of the stuff in survival. But a D4 survival with a +1 cooking, I'm not going to run the exact map. I believe it's almost equivalent to a D8 survival when they're cooking.
Yeah.
So
the other thing is using survival to cook and making like a 3-star Michelin meal are not the same thing.
Yeah. And if you want to claim common knowledge, everybody, making a 3-star Michelin meal sure as shit isn't common knowledge.
Yeah. So I
think a +1 and
originally, right?
Shinetar used them. I don't know the first one that used them, but Shinetar is one of the ones.
That's the first one I saw it in. So,
but yeah, we've been using that. It costs 1 skill point because it's +1. It's effectively half an edge. Now, what I'm toying with is you only ever get to pick. It will still cost you a skill point, so you can opt not to take defining interests. Mm-hmm. But you can only take a new defining interest every rank. Is what I'm toying with. Because I think they should still be defining. I don't like characters that go, I have 18 or I have 8 defining interests. Well, then they're not really defining. You just wanted bonuses.
I think the way Shinetar does it is it's half your
smarts. And I think you get them for free.
You do.
I like that they're a skill point buy. Again, I made that choice because I'm running ETU, and if they were free, you couldn't be undeclared.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you need to have, and it's like, well, no one ever takes undeclared. It's an option in the game. If I'm converting the setting, I need to have all the options available and viable.
Yeah.
So that's how I decided to do it. It's like, it's one skill point. But that's it. That's our house rules. Well, I think we've covered it. I definitely think we've bitched enough.
Yeah.
And we will catch you guys next week. Oh, we should talk about sponsors if anyone's still listening, which probably no one is. But as you would guess, we are part of the GM Table YouTube channel, podcast network, all of that stuff. Our official sponsor is Game Masters for Hire, the number 4.com. Right now, it'll still take you to a Patreon page because we're working on having webmasters set up. But that's something that'll use monthly billing and all kinds of complicated stuff. And Patreon does that automatically. So for now, Game Masters for Hire is using that. But Patreon. They are our official sponsor. I run games on there. I know Mike is supposed to be running games on there. And we'll be hopefully still setting that stuff up.
Yeah.
And we got some, actually, we potentially have some interesting stuff coming to that site that I know is coming soon. I don't want to reveal because some people haven't fully confirmed, but maybe some people we talked to recently who were already charging for a game they were running.
Maybe.
So getting them on board would be a really big boon. We may be able to get some people that we haven't talked to yet, but will be soon because I'm working on relationships with that. And if we can get that, that'll be huge.
Yeah.
So look forward to all of that stuff. Check us out on our Patreon. The links come up multiple times at the bottom. But patreon.com/GM Table. That's where you get videos released early. And we're working on some exclusive stuff there.
Yeah.
Like a whole new show, which is going to be the same as an actual play we're going to be releasing soon, but all the behind-the-scenes drama, too. So that'll be fun. But we'll catch you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.